It's refreshment time, folks.
Have to return some videotapes.
Are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. Don't need a TV.
Books, records, films, these things matter. Call me shallow. It's the fucking truth.
Over 1,600 titles, each for rent at just $2 the first night, and only...
Finish it.
I don't watch TV.
Yeah, but you are aware that there's an invention called television, and on this invention they show shows, right?
Tonight on 6 Ed World.
Okay, I want channels 18, 24, 63, 109, 87, and the Weather Channel.
Welcome to the Frog Brothers Podcast with your hosts, Justin and Alec.
Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of the Frog Brothers Podcast. Our podcast can now legally drive.
I mean, it could get in certain states, you can get a permit at 15 that allows you to drive by yourself, too. So technically, sometime between the last episode and this episode, in the last week, it could do it, if you want to do the math.
In the last 7 days, we got a set of wheels, and we set ourselves free.
Pretty much. Thelma and Louise style off a cliff.
Absolutely.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah, it turns into DeLorean and flies. We plan to live to see 21.
We plan to live forever.
I want to see a hover-converted Ecto-1.
That'd be pretty sweet. So actually, that's funny that you mentioned that, because back in the old-fashioned times, on the early days of the internet...
Back in the old-fashioned times.
In the old-fashioned times when I was a young whippersnapper, and I used to be
change
able to
my
do things
diaper
without my false teeth in...
This guy was doing some early 3D concept art for a couple of different futuristic Ghostbusters shows, and one of them is the Ecto is like a hover car from the future. And I found a image of it on the internet recently, and I need to re-find that, and if I do, I'll share it. I know I shared it with Troy from Interdimensional Crossrip, because he had screen grabs and stuff of it posted up on that page back in the old days. And then there was another one that was futuristic, but wasn't with a flying Ecto.
I'm about to get interdimensional and cross-rip this joint, if you know what I'm saying. So, if you don't mind.
Cliff, this bud's for you.
You drinking on anything this week?
I'm drinking a Zevia soda. So, sugar-free, sweetened with stevia leaf extract. No caramel colors or anything bad for you. So, nothing exciting, really. Yeah, but they're pretty tasty.
So there's some news going beverage. Yeah, what is it? What's the news?
Big Kahuna Burger. That is a tasty beverage.
Flock of Seagulls, you know why we're here? Go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Such a classic. So... NECA, who we've talked about frequently, teased a large, very large, like, I don't know, what do you say, it's 1.5 feet version of Bruce coming from the Jaws line that they're making.
Yeah, something like that.
And they made a caption about going out fishing, and so you could see like an unpainted, looks like, I don't know if it's just if it's a production cast or if it's still just the initial art version of it, but that's going to be pretty damn amazing.
Hell yeah.
So I'm excited to see when that comes out, but I imagine that'll be a little ways out, probably next year, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I'm just excited that they're doing it. Seeing some of the Godzilla stuff there makes me want to watch the Godzilla movies. I've even been searching up some of the Godzilla movies on VHS. But the thing is, there's different versions of them all with different titles from their Japanese versions. So it's like, oh shit. I look up one movie and I don't find it existing, but that's just because I'm looking up the American VHS. That's sometimes the movies, I don't know, they might not even be the same movie on there. I don't know much about the Godzilla movies, but I'm like, fairly interested in watching them, but
I think we need to call in a team assist from Nathan on that. He seems to be fairly well versed in Godzilla, so we might have to call in his expertise to see if he can help.
He's not a fan of those new Godzilla movies, Nathan.
Not the new ones though, but the old ones.
Yeah.
Now the new ones I don't mind. And speaking of Godzilla, though, that's good that you brought that up. They did show the first image of Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
They did have a leak of one image from that looks pretty badass. I gotta tell you, I'm excited about that movie. It should be fun.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I don't know. I'm not too critical of these Godzilla movies, but it's also because I haven't seen any of the other ones. So it's not like, I'm a big Godzilla aficionado, but I thought they were decently done films. For sure, the first Godzilla, just the regular new one they did in, what was that, 2014, 15? I want to say
2014, yep.
But the Godzilla moments were decent. The plot was done well, but it was kind of, you don't see Godzilla a lot, which I get. The second one, King of the Monsters, was likable. There's moments that are boring and or unnecessary and or too focused on the humans, which I get. The monster scenes are pretty awesome, though. Mothra being in there is pretty epic. Have you seen Kong Skull Island?
Oh, yeah, I did. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that one's pretty decent, too. So I like the little universe they have going there. At least they're not... That's probably one of the universes that, people are building within film worlds. It's actually not doing too bad, so...
And I would have to say that Kong Skull Island itself seems like it was, at least the human characters in that movie were much more enjoyable to watch for me out of all those ones, right?
Yeah.
It had just enough campiness to the tone of it that really felt like, okay, this is definitely a King Kong movie, and I would like to see that kind of campy, slightly comedic, slightly, just that, I don't know, that tonal quality that you're experiencing there. I'd like to see that carry over to Godzilla a little bit more, but...
I'm curious because I've seen a lot of people talking about the scale of King Kong and scale of Godzilla in these movies and the consistency. Because in that picture, they're roughly the same size, height-wise.
Yes.
Which, traditionally, King Kong is much, much smaller. Except for in the other, the other movie that they made where they just made him the same size as King Kong, or Godzilla. But that was a Japanese movie, not American. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know if the scale is going to be changed or if they just ignore it and make him much bigger. Because Godzilla actually, honestly, kind of looks smaller than he normally does in that photo. But maybe there's some, Ninja Turtles 2 situation, Secret of the Ooze, where King Kong grows or something,
Yeah, there could be quite a few things on there. You need to speculate on that. Like, I'm just excited to see it and see what it turns out. So, but they're fun movies, definitely. It's nice to see that anything's better than the hot flaming pile of diarrhea garbage that was the Matthew Broderick Godzilla from the 90s, which felt like Jurassic Park 3.
Jurassic Park 2.5 for sure. I was just about to call it that, because...
Yeah, because that's basically like, oh, we're going to do all this stuff that looks like this, but then it also has serious, like, alien vibes from the pods that the little hatchlings come from and stuff, so it's
right,
kind of ultra cheesy. I mean, at the time, I was excited to see it because everyone's like, oh, an American Godzilla movie, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever, and then you see it, and you're like, okay. But now we're seeing the movies, and they're actually entertaining again, so see what comes of them.
I was watching Point Break the other day, and during the garden chase scene, and it's funny that I call it the garden chase scene, the backyard chase scene, or whatever you want to call it. I call it the garden chase scene because I've heard Edgar Wright say garden chase so many damn times, talking about Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and stuff. But anyway, I was watching it, and I turned down the volume a little bit, went to YouTube and found the Ferris Bueller soundtrack and turned on the music while Ferris Bueller's running through the yards at the end of the movie. And I was like, this is the music that should be here in every chase scene where people are on foot. It works. So my point about that is I want to put that into Godzilla anytime people are running from Godzilla, is that music. because Matthew Broderick is in it. Get it?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I think it would make the film better if you just replaced the soundtrack with the Ferris Bueller soundtrack and made it kind of a sequel to that, like Ferris Bueller is in Godzilla.
There's a lot of things that could make that movie better, and that's probably right at the top of the list of things to do, right? I mean, you could get that done over a course of a weekend if you wanted and actually have a better version of that movie out by Monday. Next week if you wanted.
Yeah, I had a week back. About a week back. Waka waka waka. That's from Power Rangers the movie, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh, the Power Rangers. Where's my autograph book?
The pig monster that says that. I don't know what his name is, but he's hanging out with Goldar.
Yeah, I just wanted to quote Ivan Ooze because he has some of the best one-liners in that movie.
Hell yeah, I need to get an Ivan Ooze action figure.
Teenagers.
They have some actually pretty good Ivan Ooze figures out, even before Hasbro did them. Some of the last ones that Bandai put out were pretty badass. So, pretty sweet stuff.
Yeah.
If you haven't picked one up, that's what eBay's for.
Yeah, I was about to bring up what I got in the mail this week. Today I opened up Home Alone 2 on VHS, as well as a 1997 Power of the Force Bib Fortuna complete to, go with my Java playset. And then I also got Chucky and Tiffany Toonie chairs in just directly from the NECA eBay because I couldn't find them in stores, and I was like, well, fuck it. I'd rather give the money just directly to NECA if I have to go to eBay. And
so it's funny that you mentioned that you had to go to the store or you had to order that online, because I found them at FYE the other day when I was looking for some Ghostbusters items on clearance, and they had that one for the 2-pack, but it was $24.99.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good price or not on the 2-pack, but I know I got my Ash from Evil Dead 2. Finally found him at Target, and it was, $1,299. So pretty good value there to have your own cartoonized Ash.
Yeah. I was lusting around the NECA section at Target today myself and saw some new, 40th anniversary Alien action figures they have.
Oh, yeah, those look good.
They're like $25. They had one of Ripley, Dallas, and one of the aliens. One of the alien models that they have, I guess.
Hey, but you can't just keep running by here. So you ran right off the fucking tracks, and I'm going to stop you right here because you talked about Chucky and Bride of Chucky, yet you didn't even fucking mention the teaser for the new series. What the fuck's wrong with you?
That's further down on the list. This was talking about the mail, and then my trip to Target.
But we're just doing word associations here. Word associations.
No, that would have been a good transition, you see, but I'm not a good host, especially when I'm sitting here smoking a blunt. You see, I don't think about these things in advance and be like, oh, I should put the end of the new toys section at the end of Chucky, so that way we can transition to the Chucky show, and that'd be good for the transition there,
And we're transitioning right now, at least you are. You're transitioning to a person who feels better and happier, a little lighter on the toes. I
feel good. I feel great. I feel wonderful.
Good, great, grand, wonderful.
Baby, step your way to the next segment. Chucky Show.
Chucky Show. So I finally watched this teaser, and it starts out in a toy store, which is pretty sweet. I know that's your trigger word for you. I enjoyed seeing, you look down the toy aisles, and then you just, see the silhouette of Chucky there, and he's just laughing his iconic laugh, and you're like, all's right in the world of Chucky again.
Yep.
Now, the question I have about this series is it's supposed to be co-branded by USA and Sci-Fi. Does that mean you're going to have to tune from one network to the other each week to get the latest episode? Or does that just mean it's going to be broadcast on both networks? How's that work? No one said anything about that, and they're trying to make a big deal out of it, and frankly, I don't give a fuck as long as the show comes out and it's good.
I would guess that it'll be just like how eventually Family Guy was with Adult Swim. Eventually it was airing the new episodes on both shows because it did so well on Adult Swim that Adult Swim drives the DVD sales, which is what brought Family Guy back. Which I don't really give two fucks about Family Guy anymore anyway, but in a similar situation, I feel like it will air on probably USA earlier in the night and Sci-Fi later. And it may be something like where Sci-Fi has a license, because I'm also wondering how violent can it be if it's on USA and Sci-Fi, just regular cable. And is Chucky going to be having a fucking dirty mouth? How dirty of a mouth can he have? So you might get a clean and a dirty version. Maybe. I mean, you know, these are just random thoughts I'm having, but...
Yeah, and it's tough because what scares me is, like, Ash versus Evil Dead was so well done and, like, basically did whatever it wanted.
Yep.
Seeing the fact that this is, like, made for cable is like, are we going to get a watered-down version of it? That's the only thing I'm kind of worried about. I mean, you can make him funny, but you're never going to be as funny as, like, I don't know, Child's Play 2 to me was, like, the peak of, like, where you really find out that he's kind of, like, funny while he's a crazy nut. You know, in the first one it's more serious, so you don't really kind of explore that until the second movie.
Yeah. Either way, I look forward to it. I'm going to at least check it out and see what it has to offer. Give it a shot. Give it a chance.
So, in a long list of reboots that nobody fucking ever asked for, I heard recently that they announced that John Hamm from Mad Men fame is going to be playing Fletch in a reboot of Fletch, normally a Chevy Chase vehicle. And don't need it, don't care for it, don't know why they're wasting their time. Here's an idea. Make a movie like Fletch. Don't fucking call it Fletch. Have Josh Hamm be in it. And just fucking release
Hamm now?
Yeah, I'm just making it up because I'm pissed.
His name can be Josh. You could just fuck up the credits. Josh Hamm in Bill. Like,
I mean, may as well be, yeah. But no, John Hamm, like, it's like whatever. Just do something different. I'm all for a reboot. Like, if you liked a movie that was out before, rewrite it, give it a different title. Don't set it up to fail because it's never going to live up to the original. Or if there is a movie that was based on cool source material that was awesome, but the execution was terrible, I'm all for a remake on that stuff. But everyone's like, oh, we need to remake this. You're like, no, you don't. You can have John Hamm be whoever you want and be that kind of silly, zany, fun detective or PI, whatever you want to call him, and have him do his thing. Just don't call it Fletch. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, I mean, Fletch isn't even something that a lot of people give a shit about. That's like pretty low on Chevy Chase's totem pole as far as give a shit.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I enjoy the Fletch movies. They're fun, but I just don't see John Hamm being fun in them. Like, he doesn't have that comedic style that you're going to need for that sort of a movie. I mean, Chevy Chase is known as a physical comedian. Like, so much of what's funny about him is his ability to just fall down and run into stuff and, like, hurt himself. And that's what really made... that was his distinguishing feature as a primary character actor when he was in his heyday, right? So having someone that's not known for that to come in and do that, you're like, is this John Hamm championing this? Being like, hey, you know what I'd really like to do is Fletch? And you're like, have you ever been funny a day in your life?
He has done comedy roles, but it's kind of like how Chris Hemsworth isn't known for comedy roles, but here and then he can be funny. And people, I'll just say it, I don't really give a fuck about John Hamm. I don't hate the guy, I don't like the guy. I just don't have feelings on him.
Yeah, see, I mean, I enjoyed Mad Men, and I watched most of it, but it's just one of those things that I'm like, when I see Mad Men and then I hear that he's going to do this, it just doesn't match up. And I mean, I guess
if you look at Baby Driver, he's a little funnier in that.
Yeah, that's true.
He has some other things, but it's like I don't even watch Baby Driver anymore because that was literally like right before Kevin Spacey, all that shit happened. So every time I watch it, that's what I think of, and I'm like, God damn it, why can't I just enjoy this movie? Kevin Spacey, you fuck.
Yeah, there's several people in that naughty list of doing fucked up things to people that you're just like, it's not easy to separate the art from the person for some of these characters. So, like, that's a hard one to rewatch. Like, yeah, Baby Driver's a great movie, but then you're just like, ugh, Kevin Spacey. Fucking gives you the creeps.
So, one last thing I want to mention before we move on is that next week I will be traveling around
500 miles just to record a podcast with you and to help you move into a new place and to go to a vintage toy store that also has new stuff.
Yes, and
so that's gonna be cool.
So Alec will be coming to visit. I'm moving to a new spot, so he's gonna come help me move. We're gonna hang out, record a podcast, might do some special features. Probably he'll shoot some videos, just because we're not in the presence of one another all that often. Although we communicate regularly, thanks to technology.
Yeah, it's not unlikely that I won't
fun.
show up in my Ghostbusters uniform.
I mean, you can, but I'll be alive, so you won't be able to bust me as a ghost.
That's fine.
So speaking of Ghostbusters, so Icon Heroes also has another Ghostbusters pen coming out. So they showed the gold logo, no ghost version of Moogly, the pen coming out, and they've got a pin book that's it's in production right now. That's gonna have, I think, the 4 main Ghostbusters on it. They previewed some art for that today, so that looks kind of cool. Hopefully that'll be at a lower price point. I'd imagine somewhere under $20 for something like that.
Yeah.
And then, so I was driving today at work.
Let me ask you something real quick before you say this, because it has to do with pins, Ghostbusters pins. Do you have the Loot Crate pin that is the Terror Dog?
No, I don't.
All right, just curious. Move along.
Okay. So I was driving along at work today, and I see this busted-ass fucking Ford Explorer drive by.
I was driving along.
All decked out like Jurassic Park. Now, what made this heroic was because how fucked up the car was. The back glass was broken out. The side mirror was broken off. There was a huge dent on the front. There was some other broken glass on there, and it just looked like real-life dinosaur damage.
I think one of the front tires looked... I saw a picture you showed me, and I think one of the front tires was like a different wheel, or it was missing the hubcap or something, too.
Yeah, it was totally fucked up, and I was like, God damn, that's like dino damage. I was like, oh, it looks like a Kenner toy. Dino damage, whatever they called it, because they didn't license the right to use the Ford Explorer name.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but I mean, it was actually an Explorer, so it was actually kind of neat to see it all beat up like that, because usually when you see a fan replica, like, it looks great, and I'm like, huh, that's not a terrible idea if you got an old car like that and just made it look like it's beat to hell. So I got a kick out of that. So, but let's get into episode by episode.
Episode by episode. It's time for all little children to go Betty Boy.
Time to go, Betty Boy. I remember I just had a flashback to when we would, like, fight anytime as kids, and I would say that, like, when I was gonna whoop someone's ass. Time to go, Betty Boy.
Oh, yeah.
And I was quoting the Sandman, because I thought that shit was... I just thought it was some cold shit to say before you blew a motherfucker away.
Yeah. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, so...
We now return to the real Ghostbusters.
Diane, 11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
Pretty good. Bill Murray's the funniest man on the planet.
Episode by episode.
So, episode 12 of Extreme Ghostbusters is called The Ghost Piper of Manhattan. And it starts out with a van, or not a van, but a bus of tourists driving through Greenwich Village. And a pink ghost flies by and terrorizes them. And then we see the opening credits. Cue 90s butt rock cover of Ray Parker Jr.'s iconic theme song from the hit movie Ghostbusters. And I'm going to stop talking like that because I'm annoying myself.
I kind of got lost for a minute, and then I started eating some Junior Mints because I'm high. And
was that like
delicious?
ASMR,
Let me tell you.
they call it?
Yeah, did you know Junior Mints are vegan? The more you know.
That's good to know.
It says egg and milk may be present, but that's because they have to say it because of the factory.
Yeah.
But, yeah, pretty delicious, I must say. Junior Mints, sponsor us. I know you're listening.
Yeah, you could sponsor us. Junior Mints. I used to eat Junior Mints all the time as a kid going to the movies. Love those.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite ones. That's why I get it now. Like, I like to watch movies and eat movie theater type candy, so I buy the cheaper ones at the stores. You know, people do that shit all
you get
the
the box candy for $1 at the store and then smuggle it in.
So I picked up some Red Vines and Junior Mints because they're both vegan.
Ah, that's good to know because the thing I like about Junior Mints is when you get one of those Junior Mints that's like not so soft in the middle, it's just like a little stickier. You know, it's like the outside coating kind of let the inside dry out a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not for those, but I know what you're talking about. If you freeze them, they're pretty good.
You always have a few in the box, and it just kind of like, it feels like variety within itself.
I know what you mean. It's like when you get a basket of regular fries, and there's a couple, like 3 or 4 curly fries in there. Because you don't necessarily want a full basket of curly fries. It's like that bit in How I Met Your Mother. But it's perfectly representative of reality.
Yeah, just a few in there, just to kind of mix things up a little bit, just to show you what else is out there, maybe a little bit. But let's get back into the episode, because we derailed that pretty quick.
Yeah.
So basically, it opens up, Roland's out here playing this violin and annoying everyone in the firehouse. Like, Egon goes looking for Slimer. Garrett's making fun of Roland for playing so bad, and Slimer's hiding because the music is terrible, and Egon's like,
the frequencies of the music he's playing seem to be bothering his ectoplasm, blah, 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 blah.
And then you're like, that's going to come back to be important later. Little thing called foreshadowing.
Yeah, and you kind of like, you barely pick up on those things as a kid, depending on what age you are when you're watching these things. But like as an adult, you're like, oh, I've already solved the episode.
They just told me everything I needed to know.
Yeah, but
anyway, they get a call.
I kind of liked it. Eduardo's playing like what looks like a Game Boy ripoff.
Oh yeah,
Game Boy Color. It looks like it's red or something, but it looks sick. This
episode is not necessarily life-shattering by any means. It's kind of cool to see like just the sheer amount of ghosts kind of terrorizing the town, and then you realize that the Ghostbusters like are just struggling to catch these ghosts and handle them once they get out there and see them. And this is before you even see the Piper. So, they try to reverse the polarity, which is interesting because with the new proton pack designs, they don't go into a lot of the technology change on there very much in the show, but in this episode, they're like, let's reverse the polarity. So I feel like in some other episodes when they've modified the guns, they've gone into the gun box itself to change it, where in this one, they just twisted the canister about 180 degrees to reverse polarity, and you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Just thought that was interesting note on the technology piece, aside from the story itself.
What I will say is, this has a really good plot, this episode, but what I've realized now is the best episodes of this show are the ones with the character arcs. You know, where there's something really happening with the characters themselves. The Garrett episodes and Eduardo and Kylie ones are all really good. Roland has a couple, but for some reason, he just seems underdeveloped. Always.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they ever really followed through with the way they wrote his character.
Yeah, I don't dislike him. I just think he could. There's something missing from him. Whether it's human emotion or I don't know what it is, but he's just kind of strange.
I mean, it's not like his voice acting is bad either. The voice acting for his character is fine, right?
Exactly. I love Alfonso Rivera in that.
Yeah, he does a good job of it, but at the same time, like, part of me knows that and always feels like you're watching an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Exactly.
Like it's
but who
always
wouldn't
like
want to
creeping
see
up in the
Will Smith bust ghosts?
Well, my thing is like, why didn't Will Smith cameo as the Men in Black on an Extreme Ghostbusters episode, where they could have both been on there and then made some jokes about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air along there, right?
Right.
Explain that one to me. Missed opportunities, I'll call it.
Yeah.
Poor brand management because they're owned by the same company. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Know what I mean, Vern?
Yeah.
So they go see the mayor, and I think the mayor in this series looks funny because he's a short, little, fat, bald guy that's kind of like really kind of got a high-pitched, annoying voice and really kind of gets angry a lot, you know, kind of what you expect out of a politician.
Yeah, voiced by Billy West.
Yeah. That's funny. Because he does a lot of voice acting on this series, but, you know, usually you just hear him as, like, making murmuring and noises as Slimer, so you're like, oh, yeah. Huh. He does speak.
He sounds oddly close to a lot of his Futurama voices in that one, so...
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you know, as a voice actor, you're used to that, but as long as you're able to portray emotion through the character, it doesn't matter because it's well done.
I'll have to find some clips for you, because I have some seasons of Futurama on DVD. I'll have to make some clips somehow, but there's some commentaries with both Billy West and Maurice LaMarche where they do Extreme Ghostbusters and real Ghostbusters voices and shit.
Oh, that'd be kind of neat to see. So one of my favorite parts of this episode is they're going through 30 Rockefeller Center, right? And you see the big gold statue there, and you see like the ghosts like tear it off and take it, which is funny. Like just another throwback to that area and to the first movie where they're actually doing guerrilla shooting of the movie where they didn't have permits to shoot there, and so they're really getting chased off by security. So anytime that shows up in the series here, it's kind of funny, cracks me up, because it just makes me think of like, oh, they weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah. So,
and then obviously you kind of get to meet the Piper here, right? He comes in, he's this mysterious guy, and he's like, oh, I can make all this go away just by playing soothing music to them. And you're like, okay. And then, of course, the mayor buys it because, like politicians in real life show us, if there's a steady paycheck in it, they won't believe it and they'll make something else up. But if it's fucking absurd and stupid, goddamn, they're on board, 100%, all in.
This had 3 moments where I was reminded of 3 other movies. Three movies, I should say. The Frighteners
movies
was the first one. When he's this scene you're talking about right now, when the Piper's in the mayor's office shaking him down the first time. He's obviously a ghost, but obviously the plot of the Frighteners is that Michael J. Fox is swindling people out of money, basically pretending to be a ghost, get rid of person. I don't know what you'd call it, like exterminator, not exterminator.
Somebody saw a cockroach up on 11. Oh, sorry, 12.
Ghostbuster. It's some sort of Ghostbuster. No, but then Batman Returns kind of near the end when they're talking about all the children and shit. I was thinking about the penguins marching through the city and shit.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a little bit different of an episode here because you have the Ghostbusters coming up against someone else that's, like, hey, kind of in their same terrain there, so can't catch the ghost. It almost kind of reminded me of the episode of Real Ghostbusters where they become the crime busters because there's, like, no ghosts to catch, so kind of silly. Just kind of in that aspect that you're like, yeah, this shit's absurd, so let's just do something wild.
So I did write down a line from this episode that, out of context, is pretty weird. Where Kylie says about the Piper, he's probably controlling the kids' minds with that pipe he's got. And,
hey, out of context, that sounds terrible. That sounds like an Epstein type thing. But, that's real dark. That's real dark.
Yeah, this was called Ghostbusters Dark before it was called Extreme. Last week we were doing Extreme with some Kill Your Family talk. And this is what we're talking about this week because,
Yeah, we're just being real about what's going on out there, right? Real things apply to cartoons. Cartoons apply to real things. So the best part of this is that Roland winds up saving the day, right? Because he comes in and...
Saving the day!
They're having trouble, and then Roland comes in and starts playing the violin and just fucking destroys the Piper with his terrible abilities to jam out with his clam out while listening to him play the violin. And speaking of jamming out with your clam out, the Pied Piper looks kind of like a blowfish. Looks really gross when he turns into his like actual ghost form, and then he has the belly that's also consumes things.
Yeah, that was my last movie reference. It reminded me of Videodrome, where James Woods sticks a VHS into his stomach vagina. It's pretty weird, but that's what I thought of when I saw that. It also looks like a sarlacc pit on his stomach, so...
Yeah, and kind of the face, too, and even the eyeballs had, like, weird little slots on them, so you're just like, who's designing this, and why does everything just have slots everywhere?
Yeah, so
what the hell are you doing?
This was one of the weaker character designs as far as monsters go. It's not awful. There's parts I like about it, like the stomach is designed well, and it's kind of creepy and scary, but it could have been done better, I think.
But in the grand scheme of things, like if there's an episode that I'd be like, if I didn't see it again, I wouldn't be upset. This is one of them. It's kind of like,
Like, I feel like this episode could just use a really good rewrite, and it would have been okay.
A rewrite and some character designs, right? I think there's a few things that there's potential there. It's just not executed well.
Yeah. I would write the character designs into the script if I rewrote it. This is exactly what the motherfucker looks like. But anyway, not a terrible episode. I think it just could have been executed better. I really like the concept of it, so.
Yeah, the idea is fun. Execution was poor. So, watch it with us. Hopefully you already watched it with us, and then you feel what we feel. And then you understand the emotions we're experiencing
your
right
animality, your animality, your animality, your animality. So anyway, you want to move on?
Yep, let's move on to the comics.
Listen, buddy, if you're looking for the diet frozen yogurt bar, it went out of business last summer.
Actually, I'm looking for a Batman number 14.
That's a very serious book now.
You remember the Fantastic Four?
Oh, yeah, with that invisible bitch and Flame On and shit.
Come on, you fuckers think that just because a guy reads comics he can't start some shit? I'll fucking take all you want!
Let's move on to some comic books.
You know, I think your friend's really obsessed with superhero genitalia.
That's actually a pretty good Stanley impersonation right there. That's pretty good. I like it.
I need to work on it more. But I think I can get it around really good.
I think, you could. Keep doing that, because then we're going to have Stan Lee introduce us. You could do Stan Lee cameos, actually. You're kind of lanky.
Excelsior!
Actually, with your mustache, you could just fucking cosplay as Stan Lee, too.
That'd be epic.
That'd be pretty baller. Let's do it. Let's have it happen. You just have to speak like him the whole time. So, speaking of comic book heroes, cue the music. So, we finally wrap up the Lost Boys Reign of Frogs 4-part miniseries, originally written as a lead-in to The Lost Boys The Tribe, the amazing sequel that came along so many years later that no one even thought it was possible to make a sequel then. This is before it was trendy to make sequels to vintage movies. Interesting.
Yeah, it still happened from time to time, but it was usually like, when Terminator 3 came out and people were kind of like, that wasn't bad, but looking back, Terminator 3 looks like a fucking solid gold movie compared to the 4th and 5th entries, and even the 6th. I'll say it. I mean, some people like Salvation, and I'll say that. For me, I like Terminator 1 the best. This is kind of random. Reign of Frogs rant. But I think they degrade each time a little bit. I like Terminator the best. Terminator 2, second best. Terminator 3, third best. Terminator 4, fourth best. But you could probably switch 6 and 5, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's about where I'm at with it, right? Salvation was fun just because I liked the way the film looked, There were some story elements on there that didn't feel like just a complete rehash. That was the only movie in the series that like actually took anything to say like, hey, we're actually going to do something that's not in the timeline we're familiar with. And I think that's why I like that one as much as I do. It doesn't hold up as amazing as it could, but it's still fun in the fact that it's just not a rehash of what every other Terminator movie was. So I give it points for that. But there's moments in 3 that are cringe-worthy too. Like, I think 4 has better acting, but I think 3 is just fine to kind of get you through. Now, have you ever seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles?
It's funny you say that, because I noted that myself, that there's an ad for that in this comic book that we're supposed to be talking about, but it's such a bad issue of this comic series that we're talking about Terminator instead, because it's way more fascinating.
Yeah, so I think maybe sometime, I don't think that was a long series, but we might have to do an episode by episode of the Sarah Connor Chronicles, because I've never seen it.
I heard, me personally, I have heard that it was pretty decent.
That the bird is the word? Ba-ba-ba-ooh-mow-mow, ba-ba-ooh-mow-mow, ba-ba-ba-ooh-mow-mow, ba-ba-ooh-mow-mow.
It's funny, I was going through my vinyl today, and I have a 45 of that because of when I was like 17 and bought one off of eBay.
Oh, okay. I thought you got that up here. I recall you having that, or at least I'm pretty sure you played that on vinyl when I was around before.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I did at like a party sometime when we were wasted.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, like when we were like living a California lifestyle. Like, yeah. Whoa. Whoa. Dude. Yeah.
Anyway, so episode 4 of The Frog.
Issue 4. You corrected me last time. Now I get to correct you, you stupid bastard. No, but
what did I say? Issue 4?
Episode 4.
Episode 4.
Sweet. Sweet. Cha.
Yeah, issue 4. It's kind of interesting because this one really goes off the rails from what you think you're going to happen, right? Normally, if you're going to make a miniseries of a comic, you're actually going to have some sort of conflict resolution, typically, right? I mean, if you're figuring that this 4 parts would be one trade paperback that's going to tell one complete story, if you thought that was the case, you would be wrong and you should slap yourself in the face right now.
I was about to say, each one of these comics feels like it was written by a different person who was in middle school.
It reads like fan fiction, doesn't it?
It reads like bad fan fiction that was done like by a group of people who someone was like, all right, I'll write the first one, and then you'll write the second one, and then they'll write the third, and then we'll all write the fourth one together.
No,
and it won't make any sense.
The 4th one's written by the guy that wants to make his own fan film, not just fan fiction. So he's like,
oh, I gotta set up my new characters, man, so like I can do my own movie, and it's gonna be like an independent movie, and we're gonna do our own fan film, and you know what, it's gonna have the people from the first movie, but it's gonna be their kids. It's gonna be their kids in the new movie, man. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, the 3rd issue was the peak for me. It was decent, it had some cool ass moments in it. There was 1 or 2 things in the first issue I liked as well, but not much.
Yeah, there's probably one whole comic book that would be good out of this as far as the total content. So if you reduced the bullshit from 4 and took only the things you liked, you'd probably have one good issue.
So yeah, the cliffhanger from issue 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 was basically the same cliffhanger repeated with different characters of
yes,
look, oh my god, the grandpa's a vampire now and he's gonna murder everyone. Oh, just kidding, I'm just a good guy vampire, don't worry, don't you worry about that. And then Alan was like, and I kind of like drinking blood, but Edgar, help me Edgar.
Yeah, so then you basically, Grandpa's there to tell him like, hey, you can be a half vampire, it's cool, as long as you don't kill anybody, you won't turn, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and then Grandpa dies.
Yeah, so Sam gets cocky about the fight as they enter the throne room. Grandpa protects Sam and gets knocked in the noggin by the bondage vampire. I like that. It's like, so like, the whole scene here just felt like From Dusk Till Dawn, like all these overly sexualized stripper vampires. You're like, it's already been done better than what you guys are doing it right now, right? I get that you want to have the sex appeal of vampires, but yeah, they can wear lace and bondage gear, but they're not all strippers and they're not all into bondage. So get over it.
Was a decent reference. The only one of the few references I liked in this was when he called one of the guys Leatherface.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was probably about the only thing entertaining in there. So Alan disappears when Edgar kills the bondage vampire, and Sam's upset with Grandpa since Grandpa basically sacrifices himself. And so that ends the old-fashioned storyline. So then you jump ahead to 2007 again, which this series has been stupid about going from like the early 90s to the 2000s.
And you thought the early 90s part was bad, and then you go to the 2007, and you're like, oh god, I can't turn the page fast enough. This kid's so fucking annoying.
And obviously Edgar's still telling this story about Alan and the whole series to this little kid that, is there and wants to be a vampire hunter. And, of course he's got to say that Alan was lost into the shadows.
And the kid says annoying shit like, hells yeah, bro.
Yep.
And it makes me feel like it was written by somebody way too old to understand what children were saying in 2007.
Yeah, they're not hip.
They're not hip. They're not hip, but they very much gave me off that Steve Buscemi vibe of, how do you do, fellow children?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, that
so
hits
then
the nail on the
I don't
head.
know. To be honest, you might have to explain the ending to me, because I was just so disinterested that I was like looking at the page and trying to comprehend what I was reading. But it was too confusing. It was like, David, Michael, is the kid killed now? What's happening?
No, so basically, I'll kind of run it down here and bring us home with it, because there's not a whole lot of super amazing content left. If there was ever any in this, it was probably the cover art.
Yeah.
So he drives the kid home. So he drives the kid home, gives him a cross to protect himself, and then Chloe appears and tries to get revenge on Edgar. And they're looking for Michael and Star, and Edgar says that they died in a car wreck. So obviously this is still in the future, right? So
killed by
they
the
never
Winter
confirmed
Soldier.
them or that. So immediately the whole David looking for Star and Michael, that whole plot line is like just, we're done with it. They're not going to explain anything more than they died in a car wreck. You're like, well, it's been 20 years. Vampires couldn't find these people in all this time, and they died in a car wreck? Okay. Yeah, so then it jumps back to 87. Oh, wait a second. Sorry, I forget that, they find out Edgar embellished his story, and this kid is, after Chloe's killed by the kid, he says, welcome
and
to
then
the
half
Frog
of the
Army.
shit that you read was fake, basically.
Yeah, like he over-embellished the whole story. Like, so is this all bullshit or not, right? Which is weird because Edgar's not the type, at least how he's presented in the first movie and even the sequel movies, that these reference, like, isn't the type to completely, like, blatantly lie like that. So,
like, that was
you're
one
just
of the
like,
things
what
I
are you
liked most
doing?
about this series was the 90s part where they're doing shit like the vampire politicians and shit. And the Van Helsing Medal of Honor and shit. That was cool shit. But now I'm like, okay, that was all fake.
So the ending part that you're talking about here, right? So they jump back to 1980s. They jump back to 1987 again, and you see David and Michael on the beach, right, at the party where they're trying to get David to drink blood for the first time. Now you know what we are. Now you know what you are. Right, and you find out
you can't
one
tell
of
it's Michael because it's drawn so badly.
Yeah, well, they didn't have any licensing or whatever, so they just draw people that just look like trash. So essentially what this story is telling you is that this surfer is the surfer that's in Lost Boys the Tribe. But they're saying this is 1987.
Yeah.
So that majorly contradicts the Lost Boys the Tribe the movie, because that takes place in like 2007, 2008, whenever that is, right? In this, played by Kiefer Sutherland's brother, so it's like the Great Value Sutherland is playing the new vampire that's edgy and cool and hip and sexy, and that's the same guy is basically what they're saying. But this guy disappears from surfing for 20 years, and this young guy was like, oh, I love surfing. Well, based on his character's age and his sister's age in the movie The Tribe, he wasn't even old enough for that. So that's where they really fucked this story up. It was like, did you guys even do math? That's what really pissed me off. I was like, you had the opportunity to at least make this more modern, but they tried to tie it back into the first movie directly with this vampire character, with Great Value Sutherland as the head vampire. Or not the head vampire, but just the cool one.
See, I think somewhere there is a movie that exists between
Point Break and Lost Boys with just a dash of Bill and Ted.
And that could be amazing. Yep.
With surfing vampires, a surfing vampire gang led by Kiefer Sutherland, and Alex Winter is one of his goons. And obviously Keanu Reeves has to become one of them. And then he and Bill and Ted basically join forces to defeat the vampires.
Now, see, that's a crossover, mashup, multiverse we need. But the big problem with this movie is, like, this guy gets his leg bit off by a shark. So he's not killed. Everyone else is killed. This guy gets his leg bit off by a shark, and then he feeds on the blood of a shark and realizes, like, he can't die. Yeah. But it makes no sense to the movie, The Tribe, because that takes place so far in the future, and that guy had been a surfing hero, so the fact that in 1987 he disappeared, right? He never would have been able to make it to fame, just, unless they're trying to imply somewhere that he was a half vampire for a long time first, which I call bullshit on, so... Right. But who knows? It's like it's one of those things they tried to execute on, they never did, and they never really made more comics in this particular series. Now, there is another comic series that came out in like 2016, I want to say, but we haven't explored that, so we might get to that eventually.
Yeah, I think probably get to that before the end of this year. But.
Yep, but the miniseries there is definitely disappointing. I mean, I think you could take that concept there. I think the problem with a sequel like this is they're relying on you having familiar characters and having a reason to tie this back to the first movie, which all you need really is the Frog Brothers, and if even all of them, right? I mean, even just having Edgar in there to say, like, hey, we're having a cameo by Sam or whatever, right? Those parts of the tribe were okay, but I think it was just bad writing. It's... Sometimes you need to find people that are fans of something to, like, get your ideas from, and then, like, flesh it out with an actual writer that can, like, take that concept and just, like, consult people, right? They need more consultants on these sequel films and legacy sequels and stuff that's coming out later, just to actually find, like, how do you capture the magic of what made that movie special while telling a new story that doesn't feel like a complete rehash. And that's so much of what everyone's just trying to go for, the same tonal feelings. That's why the third... the Lost Boys, what is it? The Thirst, I think it is.
Yeah.
Actually, it's different than the first two, so that's what makes that movie so much better. So, I mean, if you eliminated the second movie and only took the scenes you needed to know to see where Edgar got with Alan and Sam, you could take that and, like, add that footage to another 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of the third movie, skip the second one entirely, and actually have a more interesting story there.
Yeah.
But
agreed.
That's what we got there. So if you're reading along, I'm proud of you. If you're not reading along,
you probably just missed these comic books from 13 years ago and aren't about to eBay them, especially after we just randomly added this segment. But hey, if you're reading along, that's pretty dope.
Now, I will say, though, that there's so little Lost Boys merchandise available to the wide public that, yeah. It's nice to have in the collection, but I'm never going to read those again.
No, not really. They could get framed for artwork, if anything.
Yep.
But hey, let's move on.
Top 5, 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 top 5.
This is Top 5.
Top 5 writer directors. Anyway, that's what's this week's Top 5 writer directors, as in people who write films that they also direct.
Yep.
Most people... I mean, a lot of directors are just directors, and a lot of writers are just writers. Some do both occasionally, some do both a lot. But this list, there's no real rules for it other than they just have to be a writer-director. Personally, I put people who almost exclusively only direct movies they've written, or pretty damn close.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say there, right? You know, I would agree with that sentiment. So, you ready to get into it?
Yep. You want me to go first here?
It's your idea, so I go first.
Go ahead. What's
So
your number
number 5, thanks for asking, by the way.
I just did.
I know, and I said thanks for asking, by the way.
But you said it sarcastically, implying that
And
I
thanks
didn't
for
say it.
asking, by the way.
And thanks for asking. I'd like
And
to
one more
ask
thing.
you a few questions.
Thanks for asking, by the way.
Speaking
Judd
of
Apatow.
assholes, I'm going to eat some more Junior Mints.
Judd Apatow is my number 5.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just like his funny stuff, right? It's easy to watch, but it also has some heart to it. But he relates to my number 1 in a certain way, so I'll kind of cover that when I get to there. But yeah, Judd Apatow, number 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5, which was my most hotly debated spot, went to the writer/director of Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, Escape from New York, and They Live. John Carpenter.
Good choice. I like it.
He also directed but did not write The Thing, Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, among others.
Excellent.
John Carpenter, yeah. Mainly for Halloween, Escape from New York, and They Live. Those 3 films I rewatch frequently. And that's kind of what I tried to go by with this list, because it was a pretty big list at first of just initial thoughts. And I tried to go with who am I most obsessed with, really, like. So
yeah, and I've got a list,
with.
like, we can talk about some of those runner-ups or just people that came to mind later.
For sure, we will.
My number 4 is Wes Anderson. So,
interesting.
Yep. So a lot of people, he's kind of got his own style, but I just think he's consistently himself, which I appreciate, right?
Yeah.
The only other director that I would say that is consistently himself in that regards would be like a Christopher Nolan, maybe. Because you kind of know what to expect, right? But yeah, Wes Anderson, he does some funny stuff. It's just interesting how he writes and tells a story, and I love the visuals of his movies. They almost feel like an illustrated children's book at times, like with like a dialogue. There's certain things that feel like, like when you're tearing things apart by a layer. There's some there's some awesome stuff in there. And then he's pretty good with casting, and he can even make some casting choices that are just excellent. And one of my favorite movies is it's definitely in my top 10 would be The Life Aquatic. Just kind of one of those movies that stands out there, and I think to me like that really goes well. And I think he used Bill Murray excellent in that film, but he writes and directs that stuff, and it's just he's kind of has his own audience, but I like it. So, what's your 4?
So, my number 4 is Wes Anderson.
No shit.
No shit. But yeah, Rushmore, Life Aquatic, Royal Tenenbaums, Bottle Rocket, Grand Budapest, Moonrise Kingdom are all movies to die for. Specifically for me, Rushmore, Life Aquatic, Grand Budapest stick out, and more recently, the Darjeeling Limited, I've liked a lot more. That one took some time to grow on me, but
yes, that one takes a few watches before it hits you the same way some of his other work does. The Grand Budapest Hotel, though, is amazing. I love that movie.
Yes, it's so fucking good and well done. I love the shit out of that movie. It's yeah. I actually have a little hat, a lobby boy hat replica.
Nice. So my number 3.
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my number 3
is
Kevin Smith. Should be no shocker there, right? There's a few people in the 90s when I was starting to go away from just accepting standard film and watching movies with my friends Tony and Daniel and Colin and Mark, and like everyone kind of finding their own taste and stuff and getting suggestions and advice on movies that we'd rented and like, oh, this is something you have to see. Mallrats was one of the first, I saw Mallrats before Clerks just because Hastings had it available to rent over there in Olathe when it was still there. And they used to do the 49-cent rentals, which was amazing. So, yeah, Mallrats kind of struck me. I was like, oh, what kind of movie is this? Like, it's funny. It doesn't feel like it's made for everybody. Like, it's the first time you feel like there's a movie made for you.
Yeah.
And that was interesting, right? Because it was like, oh, okay, so... And then you see the other stuff he's done, right? Dogma's another amazing movie there, right? Some of his other stuff's hit or miss, but he's not afraid to experiment. But Kevin Smith, like 90s Kevin Smith, is hard to beat, right? Everything was so good. Obviously, Clerks is amazing. Chasing Amy, Clerks 2 is even pretty amazing. So there's just so much good stuff in there. What about you?
Number 3. The director of 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, and also the writer of Vacation, Pretty in Pink, Great Outdoors, Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, John Hughes.
Excellent choice,
John Hughes is a legend.
Yep.
All of those movies, like literally 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller, and Pretty in Pink all came out within the same 3 years. This guy had an unbelievable fucking career. So
he was fucking prolific when he was in his heyday in the 80s and early 90s. Like, it was just fucking unreal.
Yep. What else can you say about those movies, though? They're all fucking excellent, and their rewatchability is extremely high. So...
Amen.
What's your number 2?
Quentin Tarantino.
Interesting.
Yep, Quentin Tarantino, right? I remember seeing Reservoir Dogs, and I saw Reservoir Dogs before Pulp Fiction, I'm pretty sure. And just seeing that movie was another one of those, like... It was the first time you saw how someone, like, weaved music into the movie and really made something unique with it. Even just having the radio DJ on there, like watching Reservoir Dogs, you're like, oh, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then you learn his history, and you're like, oh man, he loves movies so much, like he's into this stuff. And then you get Pulp Fiction, and then you get Jackie Brown, and then you're seeing all these things. And Jackie Brown to me feels like one that's kind of forgotten a lot, right? It doesn't come to the top of the list, but it's so damn good.
Oh yeah, it's underrated as fuck.
And then Kill Bill
it's
Volume
very
1
much...
and 2. Yeah, like that's just amazing. Like, how do you go from... He's able to skip genres, but my favorite thing about Quentin Tarantino was, like, he drops you in and you feel like you're part of the conversation because the dialogue's so fucking natural to, like, real conversation.
Yep.
And it's hard to beat that. Like, that's, to me, that's one of the things that you just feel like you're in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see what he's evolved to, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, you see like where he's been and where he's going. And I hope he continues to direct off on Broadway or theaters, plays, shows, shorts, whatever that is, instead of features once he hits his goal.
Yeah.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 is the director of Red State, Tusk, Cop Out, Zack and Mary, among, other things such as Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. But Kevin Smith. He's just one of my favorite humans in general, let alone writer-directors. So, he's going to be on this list, because I've very rarely heard anything come out of that man's mouth that I don't 100% agree with or just love listening to. It's pretty rare that I'll be like, shut up, or something like that.
Well, he's so down to earth, and like he's one of those people you see his personal growth with too, right?
Oh yeah. His books are good.
I listen to his podcasts. I listen to what he's done. Like he's had a few things that are a little hit or miss, but at the same time, he's willing to take chances too. Like Tusk is a completely like, okay, what the hell is this? But I love it. But the first time I saw that, I didn't even realize like he wrote it or directed. I wasn't even paying attention to that because someone was like, "Hey, you got to see this movie, Tusk. It's really weird," and it was streaming on Netflix. Yeah. And then watching that, you're like, okay, now some of those plot points and some of the dialogue makes a little bit more sense about the what are they, video bloggers or whatever, vloggers, whatever they want to call them.
They're podcasters in that.
Yeah. And so you kind of see, you see like the glimmers of the real awesome stuff in there, but at the same time, he's just willing to go weird, which is, it's kind of refreshing, right? Because you have to take risks and go into the unknown eventually, right? Because if you just stay in your comfort zone, you know, you may never achieve any more than what you've already done. And so he's an inspiration for that. And then, you know, not to get too crazy into it, but, you know, I ditched meat last September, middle of last September. And hearing how he changed his diet and just talking to you and some other people really kind of made it make sense, because, like, his perspective on it was more of a health-based perspective on it, and he's never been a dick about it. He's made it very accessible and easy to talk to or talk about it with, right? You know, and he's just approachable in that way. And he just feels like a real genuine person.
A real genuine guy. Yeah. Have you seen Red State?
I have not seen that one, actually, surprisingly. No.
You probably, I would imagine you haven't seen Yoga Hosers either, but if you have a choice, I would definitely say watch Red State.
No, I saw Yoga Hosers.
Okay, well, it's way better than Yoga Hosers.
Yeah, because Yoga Hosers is in the Tusk universe.
Yeah, it's like connected technically or whatever because it has the same characters, even though Tusk is 100 times better. But I mean, I'm not one of those people that thinks just because he made a movie that I don't necessarily like that other people can't like it, and that I understand that I'm not the target audience for a movie like Yoga Hosers. So
yeah, no, and that's he's willing to take risks and just do things differently. So I definitely appreciate that. So Kevin Smith definitely on both our lists.
What's your number one?
My number one, John Hughes.
Nice.
Pretty fucking hard to argue that. I mean, like we already said, he was a fucking prolific writer, writing about all these stories, directing some of these stories. It's hard to beat. You know, some of the stuff he's done and written are some of the movies I've seen the most out of anything in my life. Right? So it's hard to argue his stuff. And yeah, some of the stuff he wrote in the 90s doesn't hold up as well, but he's still an amazing screenwriter. But in his heyday, man, it was just like...
Pretty much, I mean, from 1980 to about 1992, this guy was fucking it. He was the kid, like the fucking... What was I going to say?
I don't know, you're
like,
high as balls.
Yeah, I am high. I was going to say something like, you know, the bee's knees or something smart. But he was the fucking shit, man.
Yeah, and the thing that's amazing about him, too, like, you look at what he's done, and then everyone's like, oh, all he can do is write teenage movies, right? Oh, only writes about
Bullshit.
kids. Bullshit. So then you watch Vacation, and, like, you see the struggles of an adult that he writes, but really, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. When he writes Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and he writes these two very dynamic characters, very relatable, like, you watch their personal growth on there, right? It's
even Great Outdoors.
Amazing. Yeah.
Uncle Buck has some very adult themes in it as well. So I like that about his movies. He developed and changed, and then, you know, I've ended up doing stuff like Home Alone too, which is like fucking iconic as hell.
Oh yeah. So what's your number one?
Would you like to take a guess?
Was it Tarantino?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pretty similar on these lists.
Yeah, we have the same top four, just in a different order. That's pretty funny. I wouldn't have expected it to be quite the same, but...
no, considering a lot of these directors, we never really... So, I mean, I would say I had some influence over things, but, like, there's a lot of these people that I don't recall, you know, like, say John Hughes. Yeah, we watched a lot of those movies growing up together, but I don't recall sitting down and showing you a lot of Kevin Smith stuff. So a lot of these things you found on your own, I found on my own, and they just kind of happen to coincide with what we like, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I do remember you showing me Clerks when you were like 18, so I must have been 11 or 12. You showed me Mallrats, I want to say when I was like 15, as well as Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob, and then we watched Clerks 2 when it came out because you had bought a copy. That was when you briefly lived with us at home for a short minute in Mississippi, you know.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably then when you're later in high school that, we had some more common ground there and starting to watch stuff. But you also had a few years like without my influence, so.
Yeah, but you definitely showed me Pulp Fiction was the first Tarantino movie I saw when I was probably 14.
Okay, there you go.
And I remember just being like, what the fuck? I think the next thing you showed me was Reservoir Dogs, then Kill Bill. And I eventually did see Jackie Brown. But I remember working at the movie theater when I was 16 when Death Proof came out, and it was the first Tarantino movie that came out since I was into him. And I ended up getting the standee for it. So I had part of the Grindhouse display hanging on my wall, including the Rose McGowan from Planet Terror with the machine gun for a leg.
Yeah, that was awesome. Definitely remember that. Yeah, I remember the excitement around that. So now that
he's just a great filmmaker, man. What are you going to do?
So there's a few other honorable mentions on there, people that might come to your mind. Obviously, Robert Rodriguez would be one that's very close to being on there to that list. Like, if I did a top 10, clearly he's going to be in that list.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's amazing in his own right, and just the shit he's done and, like, starting his own studios and kind of doing things his own way. Like, that's...
Yeah.
The way he's managed his business and to grow his production side of the business, not only writing, directing, but also having the production piece, that's fucking amazing. From when you look out when he did El Mariachi as a short film and how low budget that was to someone that's, doing some of these amazing, huge sci-fi movies and blue screen movies for kids that, like, they're almost better done than some of the prequels were as far as the way the stories were displayed and presented. For blue
Look
screen
at Sin
stuff.
City. That's what's so interesting about him and Tarantino. Tarantino's like, I want to shoot on film. And Rodriguez is like, holy shit, digital? I can shoot without film? Fuck yeah, fuck film. I'm going to shoot digital. I'm going to shoot everything blue screen and fucking make everything up. And then you get Sin City. And that shit is fucking revolutionary. I haven't seen the second one still. But that first one, holy shit. That's a good movie.
Yeah, no, that's well done, right? It feels like you're in a comic.
Which, speaking of Tarantino, you get From Dusk Till Dawn, which another
those two
collaboration
work
between
on that.
those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like their first. So, and some of their collaborations are amazing, right? Because
they
those are fun.
got up around the same time. If you read Robert Rodriguez's book, they met around the time where both of El Mariachi and Reservoir Dogs were on the film circuit, And they were on a lot of panels together and met and then ended up with offices next to each other. And, Robert Rodriguez directed the scene in Pulp Fiction where Tarantino's acting.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff.
And then they also did 4 Rooms together, correct?
Yeah, they both directed a segment out of that. And
one of the rooms.
that was good.
Yep.
So that's where Spy Kids came out of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he kind of morphed the idea of what his little segment was.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where his idea came from. So
nice.
And he talks about that. He's like, he talks about that in some video I watched when he's doing a speech to inspire people. He's like, even though 4 Rooms was a failure, and he says, and people like it, that doesn't mean it wasn't a failure. It was as a film, it was a failure. People didn't go see it. People didn't like it.
People
but
didn't understand
it still led to Spy Kids.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest film franchise I've done, he said, So, I mean...
Yeah, well, you never know what's going to inspire that stuff, right? And if you look at that, because I do remember seeing 4 Rooms and, like, talking to Tony about that and just hearing, like, okay, here's this character that's a bellhop that kind of interweaves between all 4 of these stories, all with different directors. But the character of the bellhop is consistent enough that you can carry across 4 different directing styles with 4 different movie styles, basically within one movie, right? Something like that would not be made into a movie these days. Something like that feels more like, say, like The Mandalorian, right? Where you have different high-profile directors coming in there and taking these characters that are going to weave and interlap with each other, but also adding new characters in there. So I think they really set the standard for being able to tell a consistent story like that and have different directors on there and a scale that's actually well done, and it's not your typical sitcom where they're like, oh, okay, we're just gonna have different directors this week, basically just to, show you how you get through. Because a lot of sitcoms don't require like an amazing director. It's carried on the story and the cast, right? It's like it's nothing like a lot of trick shots or anything over the top. It's like, okay, you find the right take, you do your editing, but with something that's a little more interesting, I think that's kind of where you find those.
So there's also Edgar Wright was on my honorable mentions. He was very close to being on the list.
Don't forget Spike Lee, man. Spike Lee.
Shaun of the Dead.
Yep.
Spike Lee wouldn't be on mine, but that's okay. I do respect the guy. But Edgar Wright with Shaun of the Dead, just that one alone, to be honest, that movie is fucking one of my favorite movies. I'll rewatch it every day of my life. But then you get Hot Fuzz, almost equally as good as Shaun of the Dead. The World's End is a little bit lower in quality, still a great watch. Scott Pilgrim, excellent. Baby Driver, other people like it more than me, but I like it. He was almost the director of Ant-Man. Yeah, you got David Lynch, Steven Spielberg.
Yep. Well, then you also have Taika Waititi.
The thing about that is...
And you have Tim Burton, you have the Coen brothers, James Gunn, and a lot of the stuff he's done is more like his underground stuff. But M. Night Shyamalan,
he wrote the Scooby-Doo movie.
Yep, and I mean you could almost even say George Lucas in some parts, but I don't really consider him that because Star Wars, he did the first one, and then after that it was like really just branching out to expand.
He did the prequels by himself, but. Yeah, he didn't direct Empire or Jedi.
Yeah, which is very interesting for someone who did that. I mean, he was obviously very heavily involved with it, but it's kind of interesting to see that. So I don't know if I'd consider him on there or not, right? But I mean, I know there's a whole generation of people that grew up with the prequels, and they think those are perfect. Just like everyone's like, well, the originals are perfect. Well, that's what's nostalgic to you, right? That's what you know and you like. And then the special editions came out and altered your history and altered what you may have appreciated. So he's kind of one of those I wouldn't 100% fully say that because he did the special editions for movies that other people directed, which is fucking weird when you really think about it. Like, hey, I'm going to redo a movie you did. Like, it's not like he brought the original directors in for Empire and Jedi for the special editions.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of those interesting things. Like,
Last one I had is Martin Scorsese. Obviously, he's probably on a lot of people's lists. But the thing about him is, there's some of his movies that I either haven't seen or straight up disliked that other people like. For example, I love Taxi Driver, but I fucking hate Raging Bull.
Yeah, you're gonna find those, right? And and to me, he's talented, right? But at the same time, he just didn't make my list. It just was like, definitely comes up on there. But everyone's gonna have their own thing on there, so jump on our social media. Tell us what your top 5 writer-directors are.
Yeah, and actually do it. And while you're at it, hit us up on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you're hearing. Give us a review. Give us some feedback.
Yeah. So.
You don't want us exposing ourselves. And you don't want us exposing ourselves. Exposing ourselves.
Hey, remember like 20 minutes ago when I did this whole spiel that you kicked me in the nuts about? And I was like, oh, hybrids like Jurassic World, where we got hybrids, and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where hybrids are hybrids, and we're doing hybrid stuff. So I'm back on the hybrid kick because we're doing film exposure and Another Man's Garbage for our movie this week. And could you guess what movie that would be? Well, seeing as we haven't said a fucking word about it, I don't think you're going to guess unless you read the description or saw the podcast art. So maybe I'm wasting time asking these types of questions when we're going to give it away somehow anyway. But it's the movie Last action hero starring none other than Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger. You might know him from...
It is not a movie that I had seen before.
You might know him from a classic comedy, family, holiday movie, Jingle All the Way. But that's not what we're talking about.
Put the cookie down!
Put the cookies down! Those are my cookies!
Well, I love eating these cookies. That's my Phil Hartman. Still working on it.
That's actually pretty good, too. So we got a few impersonations we need to get you doing more often. Anyway, so Last Action Hero. You've never seen this, so...
Oh, Last Action Hero. I love this movie.
Last Action Hero. So, what'd you think?
So, I hadn't seen this before. But I'd always kind of like flirted with the idea of watching it. I was like, I'd like stroke the movie's chin and be like, maybe. But you wanted to watch it for this podcast, so I was like, fuck it. Film exposure. I'm going to expose myself. Arnold's going to expose himself to me in this movie, and he's going to talk about premature ejaculation. So,
yes. I have a note of that, too. That's on my list of things that like come up in this movie. You're like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. It has a really interesting introduction. I don't really want to go through plot point by plot point with this movie, but I have a few notes, and then you want to go with a few notes, and then we'll just kind of see what happens. But Robert Prosky's in this. He plays Nick, and I immediately recognized him from Great Outdoors.
Absolutely, yes. I was hoping you realized that.
As well as Gremlins 2.
Absolutely.
He's the Grandpa Fred as the vampire. So,
yes, badass.
I like seeing him in there. He's also in Christine, because I did look him up to confirm that it was him from Great Outdoors. I was like, I swear to God, that's him.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's fun. He actually kind of makes, he's one of the better parts of the movie, even though his role's kind of small.
Yeah, so the intro to the movie is pretty interesting. Kind of got boring at times. I kind of wavered in and out of paying attention here and there, which I can see why it has low ratings and stuff. But some parts are really fucking awesome or hilarious. Arnold's really good in it, as far as Arnold goes. It is basically Arnold Schwarzenegger, the movie, so...
Yeah, and that's... To me, that's what the charm and the appeal of this movie is, right? So you're looking at a movie that's almost 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're right, it gets very boring in some spots. Really dull. They could have had a really fucking good cut of this movie in about an hour and 30 minutes. And had a really fun
movie. An hour and a
movie.
half.
Yeah. Could you come back in an hour and a half? The movie still won't be over because it's 2 hours and well over 2 hours. And that's way too long because this is kind of like a kid's movie, right? This isn't like rated R or anything, and a lot of the action movies Schwarzenegger was doing.
Exactly. It's like almost a parody of action movies, spoofing action movies throughout, which is good. But also, then at times it feels like all of a sudden this is supposed to be like the guy who was writing the movie got too invested in the plot instead of making me laugh and think things are badass.
Yes.
Which is what I feel like I should be doing in this movie. It's just being like, hell yeah, action movie time with Arnold, and then laughing my ass off at the spoofy shit. But, which I did, and then occasionally I was just like, what, people talking right now? What's going on? Which, you know me, talking doesn't bother me in a movie, but this movie's called Last Action Hero.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so to me, one of the things that makes this movie fun is the fact that, there's like a really whimsical, fun element that could be in this movie that just kind of comes and goes. It's not consistent, is what I'd say with the writing, at least how this was edited, with the cut being too long, right? I do like seeing like that this kid's life is not easy, and I do like that he uses the movies for escapism, right? Like a lot of people can relate to that, right? That's a lot of people use familiar movies to escape anxiety, familiar TV shows to escape anxiety.
Exactly.
That comfort you can get from entertainment and pop culture is pretty profound. And then this movie's like teetering on having some of those elements. And this is actually almost a movie I'd like to see remade. because I think it could do a much better version of it and still have Arnold Schwarzenegger be in it. Because he's at a point where he's old enough now, so him not being able to do the stunts would be kind of funny, or showing that it's all movie magic.
Yeah, it was pretty funny seeing the Terminator 2 poster with Sylvester Stallone on there instead.
Yes, and so there's also some great cameos in this movie. Did you notice that the cartoon cat detective was voiced by Danny DeVito?
I did.
Yeah, that was pretty badass. And then Robert Patrick cameos is the T-1000 cop leaving the police station in L.A.
Yeah, that was one I wasn't sure I saw, but I was like, holy shit, did I just see the T-1000 walk by?
Yep, and at the same time, Sharon Stone comes out of there, and she's portraying her role from, the hell's that movie she's known for, where she shows her snatch? Drawing a blank on the damn title of it right now, but you know what I'm talking about.
Basic Instinct?
Yep, that's it, yeah. Yeah, so she cameos as her actress, or her character, her actor character from that movie, so, that's kind of fun. And then at the film premiere, you see a bunch of other stuff. Like, to me, that film premiere scene was one of the funner parts of the movie. There's a lot of entertainment in there, seeing Arnold interacting with himself. You find out that, like, in real life, it's kind of interesting. So Charles Dance plays, like, the primary villain, right? So if you've seen Game of Thrones, you obviously recognize him. I know some people think it's blasphemy to talk about Ghostbusters Answer the Call, because I don't hate it with all my guts and passion.
But Charles, bummer, your opinion's different?
Yeah, I have a different opinion than most people. I didn't mind that movie. But Charles Dance actually plays the... he's in there, so he's the one that... when her tenure's up for review, so he plays the old guy in there. But interesting to see, like, his filmography, which kind of...
You have no place in this department? Or in this university.
Pretty much. So it was kind of neat seeing him in there, and seeing that he's been in a bunch of other stuff. So he played a pretty good villain in there, too.
It was pretty interesting. I mean, again, I kind of wavered in and out, unfortunately, but...
And the crazy thing is, it's just too long, right? So once the setup, I mean, really, if you're going to do a movie like this today, you'd want to have, like, within 15 to 20 minutes, you'd want to have the kid going into the movie, right? And it feels like it's so drawn out with how you get there, right? You see him watching a Jack Slater movie, 3, I think, is what he's watching.
You know what I want to see? I'm talking about a remake. Remake it with Keanu Reeves.
Ooh, that would be good, because he's done a lot of action and comedy, too.
He's done fucking John Wick, which is like, what is the Slater? Jack Slater?
Yep.
Could just be John Wick, basically.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, because your first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you meet the kid, you realize, like, this film hero, this action hero is, like, who he looks up to. They got a new movie coming out. Like, I did like that, hey, we're going to show the midnight screening of this movie. I'm going to do a test of the print, right? Because back in the day when you had film, you would test your prints. I think we're all of the generation. You worked at AMC. I had friends that worked at AMC, and they could always take somebody to see a movie. Like, hey, we're going to do a test run of this film, make sure it works. They don't really do that anymore, because it's all digital for most places. So
they still sometimes test them. But... it's not like open to the public or even bringing people. It's just employees.
Yeah. So,
but that's really just if it's like some of them are time locked and stuff, so they won't even play before certain times and stuff. It's very bizarre. But one time I watched a cut of what was it?
I don't know. You tell
Last
me.
Jedi. It was Last Jedi at like 6 a.m. The Wednesday that was before it came out.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I was like, I win for once in my life. I've done something cool, although this movie wasn't that good, so actually, maybe I should have just slept in and watched it another day. But I was still pretty satisfied when I saw it.
There are some moments in that movie I really liked. There's some things that I'm like, whatever. It's what happens, though, when you have people that aren't unified on the front of telling a coherent story.
Yeah, I really like all the shit with Yoda in there.
Yeah. But let's wrap up this Last Action Hero discussion then. So, if you're looking at this movie, you could edit a lot of the bullshit out and get right to the point where you see, like, hey, it's in reality, because, like, you're, like, almost, I think you're well, like, over into an hour, damn near an hour and a half into this movie before the villain realizes, like, he can take this magic ticket and come to the real world and go places and, like, rob stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's not nearly as funny as it could be, right? Because when you realize that you're in reality and, like, things don't blow up, then, you know, things happen this way or that way. Like, there's one scene where the villain, Benedict, realizes that, like, people rob a guy's shoes. He's like, and he just looks disgusted, like, they fucking stole his shoes? You're like, yeah, that's real life. But, I mean, you could have made things much funnier than that, right? And so it's kind of sappy, and then obviously there's, like, a bit at the beginning of this movie that basically the mom's like, I didn't ask to be a widow before 40 or whatever, right? So you kind of get this vibe that this kid's looking for a father figure. I think they could have... I mean, this movie just needs an edit. Edit a few things out, add a few pieces of dialogue to make you understand why this kid idolizes Jack Slater so much and why Nick looks out for him so much. Because that's really the heart of what this story could be. And then just make it funny and ironic that they go into the movie and then they come out of the movie. I mean, it's a unique idea when you think about it, right? So we're going to get sucked into the movie, then we're going to come out of the movie.
Yeah, I made a short film about a guy that gets sucked into a TV, but it was way more David Lynch than Last Action Hero.
Yeah, and that's available on YouTube by now.
Available on YouTube everywhere.
Available to stream on your smart devices on the
internet. So that was Last Action Hero. If you've seen it, let me know. But the other thing is, though, is toy collectors, right? That's some pretty badass toys for this movie. A lot of toys for that. And they're Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? So, you know, they really pumped the idea of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger as a toy brand with this. Because they had success with Terminator 2 toys, right? And you're like, okay, how do you make a toy line for an R-rated movie for kids? Well, they did it with Terminator, but with Last Action Hero, it was a little easier, and it's not all about crazy other stuff. So you've got this gold convertible that he drives around in. You got Schwarzenegger in this classic red shirt and brown leather jacket that's like his action hero look for this movie. You've got the kid. So remember my friend Joel had a bunch of figures and stuff from this line. I never had anything from it, but it's pretty cool to look it up and see what actually made it into the toy line from this movie.
When did you see this one?
So I missed this one in theaters. So I saw this as a kid. Like I said, Joel, I think, had a copy of it on VHS after it came out because he really liked it. And so I remember watching it the first time and liking the idea of it, right? Because you're like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like, it's a kid. Especially as a kid, it's relatable. But as an adult, I see what they're trying to do, but then you just see where they kind of missed the mark. Like, you could make a movie like that that would be almost endless and like a timeless classic, right? If you had executed properly. They just missed the mark.
Execute. Last Action Hero remake. Execute Order 66. So that's what people need to do with remakes, is not remake good movies. Remake movies that kind of miss their mark.
Yeah, something based off good source material or a good concept. Like you said, I would love to see a remake of this with Keanu Reeves. That'd be amazing, right? Because I think he has the depth to pull it off, right? He's been in funny movies. He's been in serious action movies. You have the ability to break the fourth wall.
He's someone who's fucking even more well-loved than Arnold, though, too. Like, who doesn't like Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, and it's so tonally... And the first movie's so tonally all over the place, right? There's moments where, like, okay, it's movie magic, and there's, like, some special effects for the movie tickets. And then beyond that, it's just, like, an action flick. And it can't decide what it wants to do, besides the kid, like, calling out, like, all the stuff that's in the movies the whole time. Which, he's the most consistent thing about the movie is his character, right? Because even Arnold's, like, just kind of playing into, like, the stereotypical action character. So, and we almost need to look up and see whatever that kid went on to do, because it's not like he's great in this movie, but he's not terrible either. So you're just like, what happened to him?
Melissa walked in while we were watching it, while I was watching it, and she said that he was the kid that is apparently in My Girl 2. I don't know if that's valid or not, but...
Oh, okay, yeah, and I think he did that My Girl 2 after this movie, because I recall him being a little older, but I think he kept that silly fucking haircut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense, but, like, what else has he done?
Couldn't tell you. But what you do have to look forward to is, acne, shaving, premature ejaculation, and your first divorce.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that whole line there was one of the funniest things in there.
I agree.
And then there's like obviously the gratuitous ass and titties in the movie. Like that's the most out of place thing for a PG-13 movie, right? Is that?
But it is making fun of action movies. So
yeah, but like how they always find a way to make a strip club scene in there or something like that, or a pool scene. Yeah, and so like they crash into this strip club and there's all these girls wearing lingerie hanging out or whatever. And you're like, whatever.
Yep.
So let's remake it with Keanu Reeves.
Let's do it.
We need
have Edgar Wright direct it.
Hell yeah. Well, we got some fucking options on the table.
Oh yeah. If I was only a studio head. Get me Keanu Reeves and Edgar Wright on the phone.
Then get me somebody while I'm waiting.
Exactly. And give me somebody while I'm waiting.
Yeah, put it over there with the others, greaseball.
Exactly. Theo B.D. Murray.
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah. Brian Doyle Murray is a fucking icon, man.
Hell yeah, he is. He helped write Caddyshack.
You don't know Noah's Arcade, I don't want to know you. Sphincter boy. So what else you got?
So that was this... I did get the Shadows of the Empire CD soundtrack.
Yeah, I'm waiting on mine to
give
be
that a
delivered.
listen.
So explain that to me then.
It's very bizarre. I'm looking... Here, let me read the liner notes to you here.
How bizarre.
Or at least just,
how bizarre.
Just a
Remember
little bit
that
here.
stupid song?
How bizarre. How bizarre.
Our dad fucking loved that song. I remember one time, so while you're looking up your liner notes here, I remember we're at fucking Walmart looking for music, and Dad was looking for that, and I can't remember the band's name or whatever, but he was like, I think it's like just a 3-letter acronym or some shit. And he kept saying it wrong, and no one could figure out what he was looking for. And then finally he found it, and then he like said it right and made it sound like that's what he'd been saying the whole time. And I was like, no, you're saying that wrong the whole time, and you happen to find it.
Fucking typical. So,
such a fucking dad thing to do.
Forward, an original orchestral score composed for a book? Why not? Composers have, from the very earliest days of music, owed a great debt to and taken very much inspiration from the written word. I say to that is print is dead, but historical events, plays, poems, sonics, myths, and legends have all at one time. Blah, 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 blah. Basically, it's saying that this isn't the video game music. This is just accompanies the Shadows of the Empire existence. So it might have some cues that you hear in the game, but from what I'm understanding is that this, I don't know, you're supposed to read it while you listen to it while you read the book or something?
Apparently
just put
so.
you in the
That's
mood.
what they make it sound
Play with
like.
toys while you listen to it.
Because originally when they announced the vinyl reissue, I was assuming it was supposed to be like a vinyl of the video game sound score.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I hadn't played that game in so long. It was like, well, whatever. I guess that's unique to do, but okay.
So
Give
I'm
it a
gonna
try.
probably do an unboxing at some point of all these Toonie Terror figures.
Oh, you're still in package?
They're all still in package right now. But I think I'm going to end up opening them and then displaying them at some point. And they would make good display pieces with both, as you've mentioned before, Scooby-Doo figures and the real Ghostbusters figures. So,
yes, I would agree with that. I think they would kind of mash up well with those two lines. I did open my Ash figure just because I was like, well, may as well check it out. I got to say, though, after seeing what they did with some of the other figures, like the Freddy Krueger figure is kind of disappointing because he's just so static. Like Ash has a little bit more movement. Like he can stand on his own. He doesn't need the stand. He has the shotgun he can take off and on, and his arm articulates. So it's just like
the stand.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't need one.
I thought you...
He stands up well, but Freddy's pretty static. I think you can move his arms a little bit, but other than that, yeah, he needs to stand to even stand up. So,
yeah, I have 6 or 7 of them in box still. So, I think I'm gonna do a video where I open all of them at some point when I have some time.
Yep, we need another mail time video, so be looking for that in the future.
Yeah, YouTube's been a little bit crazy lately. It's a little behind, but it's gonna be fixed shortly here soon. We'll have some new stuff being uploaded regularly.
Yeah, and you've had
the internet's just been a pain in the ass here, so
yeah, you've had some failed attempts at uploads that really kind of suck for that. So, and you might ask yourself, well, Justin, why wouldn't you upload that? Well, if Alec can't upload it, how the fuck am I going to upload it if he can't upload it so I can download it to upload it? Riddle me that, Batman.
So, well, don't worry about it, though. We'll get that stuff taken care of so you can, all 25 of you can watch the mail time videos.
Yep.
And hopefully tell your friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and so on, and so on,
and so forth, and so on.
I watched Wayne's World 2 the other day, so on VHS.
Excellent choice. Did
Excellent.
you get your football phone?
I did, as well as my sports illustrated swimsuit issue.
Excellent.
Excellent. Feel the hate flow through you.
Follow the weird naked Indian.
That's such a classic. Well, I think that's pretty much the show, man. I think we're kind of running out of stuff here, so we may as well not take up any more people's time. So if you like what you hear,
we're running out of gas
like,
here.
What's that?
I said I think we ran out of gas.
So we're going to get out and push this thing to the finish line as I bid you adieu. Give us a 5-star rating. Don't give us a hug because you need a social distance. Look for Alec on OnlyFans. I'm just kidding. Just send money to our Venmo and PayPal, and Alec will send you surprise photos. And expect some shenanigans next week when Alec comes in town to help me move.
Oh, yes. There'll be all sorts of random things, spontaneous things, possible filming in public locations.
Probably mostly combustion, but other things too.
Who knows?
Who knows?
It is mysterious.
Yes. Well, we will see you next week. So, good night. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-byes.
Oh, bye, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, bye, Mark.
These are my dinner guests, the Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. These are my dinner guests, Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. These are my dinner guests, the Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers. Frog Brothers.